For more on the politics, let's turn to our own Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine, and we'll see who he paraphrases in the next 4 minutes. Good evening, Howard.
Hi, Keith.
It's many before this speaker have not gotten anywhere near this far, as Senator Whitehouse just made reference to and praised. How big an accomplishment is this, balanced against how irrelevant might the whole thing be? What kind of failure might it be unless there is a final and comprehensive bill that gets to the president's desk?
Can I say first that the senator is a very smart guy, so I don't think he takes Joe Olbermann at face value. I think he was just saying that, okay?
Yeah.
Now, as to the House, it would be worse than irrelevant if the Senate doesn't pass something, if the whole thing falls apart now. First of all, you'd have Democrats descending in anger upon each other. You'd have a lot of what really were, for some Southern Democrats and other blue dogs, a courageous vote in favor of the bill that would go to waste. You'd have Nancy Pelosi being even more of a symbol both of success and of failure. You'd have an angry president. It would be worse than irrelevant, this vote, if the things don't go forward now.
Babies as political props. Babies, by the way, who are trying to get a hold of the microphone, as all babies do. Do we think this stage of the debate is over, or are we just seeing a sort of Senate version of the props and grandstanding that we saw at the town halls and even in the House?
I got to say, just the thought of Mitch McConnell, the grave leader of the Republican Party from Kentucky, there on the floor of the Senate holding up a baby, that passes all understanding. But I think the issue of the deficit is one that the Republicans are going to try to drive. Shattuck did it with the baby. The Republicans in the Senate are going to try to do it. But as you pointed out, the Republicans don't have a lot of credibility on the issue. They really don't. That doesn't excuse the Democrats if they don't really come up with a deficit-neutral bill. But because of what George Bush did, that the Republicans waved through in terms of unpaid-for tax cuts, in terms of unpaid-for prescription drug benefits, in terms of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that have cost so much money, they have no credibility on the deficit issue either. They think it's going to drive them through 2010. I'm not sure that it will.
One final thought on the baby. Martin Sheen did that as a baby as a prop in the great movie Dead Zone. So it didn't. It's a real bad thing. Hold the baby up in front of the.
Probably not a great idea.
No. Yeah. And speaking of movie analogies, into the Senate now, as we've gone through the House all this time, did I not see this sort of molasses-paced movie already? And I don't mean to insult the movie, but we're not Bill Murray and Chris Elliott and Andie MacDowell in that version of it? Is it not Groundhog's Day? Are we going to get passed by Groundhog's Day?
Well, let's see. Groundhog Day is what, February 2nd or something like that?
Yes.
February 2. I don't know. I think maybe. Listen, the Democratic leadership in the Senate, and I talked to a bunch of Democrats today on the Senate side, they know they've got to get this thing passed as soon as possible, which, by the standards of the Senate, means, and I think the senator is right about this, before they go home for Christmas. If they let the thing slop over into next year, it's going to become harder and harder to do, just because of the natural drift of things, because of other events intervening, because the president's going to have his budget, because he's going to have the State of the Union, because of all that stuff. There are plenty of reasons why it's imperative, if the president and his Democratic allies want to get this thing done, that they need to get it done before the end of the year. And I think they're still going to try. To switch analogies to baseball, sometimes, you know, the pitcher's taking a slow windup and then he quick pitches. I think there's a little bit of that going on here. They're talking about next spring, we're going to let it go. I think what Harry Reid really wants to do is to try to jam this thing if he can. And by the Senate standards, jamming means 2 months.
Yeah, because if you go to the winter recess, you also have the prospect of snowballs at town halls. Howard Fineman of Newsweek and MSNBC. Great thanks as always.
Thank you, Keith.